they meet up, and the Raven Hunter really doesn't want to fight, right? But they have to anyway. And it's a tie, right? The Raven Hunter is not using his full power because he actually wants real competition. He wants to feel what it's like to struggle, you know? And then eventually Roxxon and Sable come in. Spider-Man tells them to stop because they'll get hurt, but they don't stop. And eventually, through them teaming up, they manage to, use those red things that put Spider-Man like, oh, I can't move. They use that on him, multiple ones, and they manage to catch him and they interrogate him. Apparently that chemical was never real and it was all staged. And that apparently Doc Ock had a... sorry about that. And apparently another multiversal creature had received a power-up, and that's all the Raven Hunter knew. And just like that, he was gone. Then the interrogation room's power got cut off, and when it was back on, the Raven Hunter was gone. Spider-Man tries to figure out what happens. Well, what does he mean? What does he mean? Okay? And eventually, through spying missions, we find out that that this new form is like the most powerful version of Venom. Well, this one at least. Basically, it's entirely black. No white spots at all. And it has the fastest reaction skills. It's faster than a zillisecond, which is really fast. It can do that. So Spider-Man's worried. Oh, what does this mean? He tries to get physical pictures of this, and through battling more enemies that are supposedly working for him, we find out that this creature is actually weak. That basically what happened was that it was actually created by a redacted company. Spider-Man tries to go through the records of the abandoned building that he found this information in, but there's nothing there, right? It's all redacted. All you can get out of it is that this creature was made by a company on Mars, and it was accidentally ejected out around 70 years ago in a pod, and it recently came back into orbit because it had been hit by a meteorite back in Earth's orbit, and it crashed, and it was weak. And it was the weakest it could be. So it's been nerfed a lot, basically. And that apparently it needed to regain its strength. So it had taken control of somebody. And that's pretty much the end of the log. We try to investigate the place more, but it just confirms the same information we already have. So we head out of there. We try to go through the local police records by teaming up with a black cat, right? And all she can figure out is that the Mafia has been hitting nearby Roxxon, Sable, and Oscorp containment unit sites. Basically, those are where all the stuff like Electro Sue or stuff like that would be, So yeah, that's being hit by the Mafia. So that's but it's not the original Mafia. Apparently the previous Mafia, the biggest one, had actually been killed. Basically, they were hiding in a Oscorp and Roxxon containment site, and apparently they had done a big distraction to call out all the guards, and then they had airstriked most of the power sources, which had revealed all the doors, since the power was out. And instead of like a whole squad going in there, only one person was sent in there to kill the mafia, and that's what they did. They just shot them up, and then they put bombs on them and then put them back down. So then when the Roxanne would eventually investigate, they would be bombed. And that's what happens. Except he only kills one person because the rest are weary and they send one person to go and investigate it, So yeah, the mafia, so there's a new owner of the mafia. It's unknown if it's two people or one person, what gender they are, what they look like, or anything at all, So yeah. So Spider-Man first tries to figure out who the leader of the mafia is, because they've been hitting up more and more places while this new creature hasn't been really doing anything. And he figures out that it's someone named, what was his name? Tombstone. The guy who's invincible, big guy who can't die. Like in the Spider-Man game, he like, oh, shoot me, and then he shoots him, and then the bullet's on the ground, and then he's like, and he squishes their head, and then they have to carry him out, and it's an MJ sneak mission. It's him. He's the leader now. So, and he's a perfect fit because unlike the previous ones, he can't die, right? So, Spider-Man has the Roxxon, Sable, Oscorp, and all the police in one of the nearby supply bases for the Mafia, which has been rumored to be undercover. To be an undercover shop, so that they can make money. And apparently it's where one of the main leaders of the Mafia is, not the real leader, one of them. There's multiple ones. So, yeah, he's taken out because apparently a bullet had been deflected off one of the soldiers' armor, and he had hit that leader in the head, in the brain right here. So yeah, and while then, Spider-Man tries to visit Tombstone. He figures out that first he needs to get some DNA traces of him to maybe, figure out how to cure his immortalness, And then he manages to find it because apparently his company and the Mafia had been hitting up nearby chemical plants of Roxxon, Oscorp, Sable, and even some police and even some small police-owned ones, right? And apparently, Tombstone had actually used those chemicals to enhance his powers, but reportedly they had no effect, right? So he uses that as a DNA sample, and he manages to, and he's so close to a cure. He just needs a new physical DNA piece, like saliva or something, right? So then he tries to go and figure out where the next place they're gonna hit up is, and he finds out it's a nearby police station. And apparently, Tombstone's going to make a special visit. So Spider-Man goes there and he tries to investigate, and he finds out that there's hidden tunnels underground, and he sees Tombstone himself just sleeping there. Spider-Man knows he can't find him right now because, no matter how hard he hits, it won't do anything. It's like hitting a brick wall, So he quickly gets that saliva sample and uses it and creates a cure. And then they put Tombstone in like a device. He's put in that device and he's given an oxygen tank. And he tries to figure out what's going on because when they leave, he goes and investigates. And apparently, the modifications were getting too much for his body to handle. So some of his oxygen would be, so sometimes it's, how do I say this? So it's harder for him to get air sometimes. So he has an idea. He quickly gets the cure out, right? And then he goes to an Oscorp chemical producing facility and he makes a bunch of samples. He makes one full tank of the cure and then 5 shots of the cure and along with 2 pills. So that's what Spider-Man does. He replaces the oxygen tank with that and he paints it to make and he makes it to look like a regular oxygen tank, and then he puts it on Tombstone, and then he injects Tombstone with that syringe and then makes him swallow the pills, and then he puts the mask on, so then and then he leaves, right? But before that, he gets all the data out of all the computers, and then he goes to the nearby police station, telling them what his plan is. He's telling them to evacuate everyone in a 25-mile radius. And that's what they do. They quickly do that. And when they confirm everyone's evacuated, they get all the data out. What they do is that they download all the data on a USB stick and then they wipe the computers clean. They also go to the search history and everything, all that, and they wipe it clean so there's no data he can get. And then he also goes to Oscorp and tells them this, and that's exactly what they do. Basically, Oscorp and Roxxon and Sable take the major facilities where all the data is, and then stores all that data in a USB stick, and then clears the computers and all that clean. So Tombstone won't know their plan, just in case he decides to make another another surprise visit. He also makes sure that to have better armed weapons and stuff like that. So yeah. And then Spider-Man says that this should be happening any second, and then we see it. An airstrike hits the police office, and a part of the building falls down, and the building is on fire. And we can see, the mafias, people, employees, I guess you could say, doing it. They have rocket launchers and stuff. I want to know what they do. This is clever. Basically, they get their own rocket launchers and they attack the helicopter part. So then it goes flying down. And then we see it explode and crash. Right? And then we see even more of those people trying to break in and get the data, by the front, trying to get into the entrance. When what Spider-Man does, this is clever. He actually puts bombs under the stairs. So then that way, if they get in, he can have a fail-safe, And then he realizes that there's a nearby roof that's really big, and that could be a potential battle arena too. And in fact, the document that says all this highlights that building multiple times. So Spider-Man breaks in there and then plants bombs there too, just in case. And then he sees Tombstone in a nearby in a truck being transported, things, so his night vision, and he quickly gets in there. He breaks in there, very quietly, and then he checks to see if the cure has worked, and it has, on multiple levels. He's even weaker than a human now. Right? like, he might be strong, but he can't take as many hits anymore. He just can't. So Spider-Man places even more bombs, and then when the truck arrives, with like in the main center of all the employees when they're shooting, Spider-Man detonates it. Boom. And then we see Tombstone crawling out on a limb, barely being able to walk. And then Spider-Man sees that Roxxon, Sable, and Oscorp and the police are gonna rapidly shoot at him. So then Spider-Man takes all the bullets and tells them to stop. And then he quickly manages to, get a Tombstone out of there. And in a nearby regular truck, to disguise it, he's disguised in a feast truck. Nobody would suspect that Tombstone will be in a feast truck. And then boom, he's headed off into Feast. Because nobody would expect that. And the police in Oscorp, and they're actually doing a really good job. If eventually they'll win, but it'll take more time. But if Spider-Man came in there, it would take a lot less time. So that's what so Spider-Man goes to Feast and interrogates the hell out of Tombstone. He almost put a gun he put a gun in his Tombstone's mouth, and he almost made it go off. And boom, he got all the data, recorded it, and boom, he sent it to Oscorp, Roxxon, Sable, and the police force, and all of them. And then he goes to the fight, and he sees that they don't have any leader anymore. But then he sees multiple other helicopters and multiple machine guns being used on that building that was highlighted. So he makes the building explode, and then the job's done. All of the helicopters have been taken out. Tombstone is weak as hell. One bullet could kill him. Now, I'm pretty sure if you just took a stick and were it would kill him. Sable rocks on Oscorp, and the police force took care of all the minions and interrogated them. And then Sable was the one who actually killed them all. Spider-Man tried to stop them, but he knew that he really doesn't want to be an enemy of Sable. And then Roxxon goes to where Tombstone is, and he's about to escape. And then they quickly, a team of snipers shoot at his head, and they all hit him. He's hit in the brain with 5 bullets, and then he falls down, bleeding. So they call a team there to clean it up and all that, and then they incinerate his body along with all the troops just to make sure he can't come back. And then all the people who live there are given temporarily homes to live in while it's all repaired and stuff. And then Spider-Man manages to find out who this villain is. Apparently, Fisk had been taken down, but his death had been staged. Fisk was a drug lord who was actually taken out by the police, not Spider-Man, because Spider-Man was having his own life, So he was taken care of by the police force and put in a maximum security prison, and apparently he got killed there. But there were no witnesses, and the security cameras had gone out. So and his body had apparently been eaten by a cannibal there, multiple cannibals. But they had denied the claim. But the refs just thought that they were lying and punished them. But Spider-Man realized that, hey, maybe Fisk is not dead. Maybe when this thing arrived, it had made a deal with Fisk to break him out. So he staged his own death and got rid of all the witnesses, and then this thing helped Fisk get out. And then immediately Spider-Man goes to the old Fisk Tower, and he sees it in ruins, you know? It's been around 20 years. There's veins all over, leaves and stuff like that. And it's starting to glitch out a little too. And Spider-Man goes to the very bottom of it sneakily, and he sees Fisk. And he doesn't, and there's something else. He's still wearing his prison uniform. And you see something black on one of the tears. The rest of his body's white, but there's just a certain black spot. He thinks, that's it. That's the thing. Right? And he doesn't want to go in a battle because he doesn't know the strengths or weaknesses. Then Fisk is talking to one of his minions, saying that he'll be right there in around 10 minutes. But that the elevator needs to get ready. So, and the elevator is actually being updated. So what I know what Spider-Man does? Spider-Man makes his own scanners that scan living organisms to tell the strength, speed, and all that. And then he puts that there. And then he sees Fisk go in the elevator after 10 minutes to go there. And he gets the full scan of Fisk. Then he also gets the full scan of that thing, you know? And he sees that it's really weak. Apparently, all it would take is that it would need to permanently fuse to a person, right? And then that person would just need to be killed. Most symbiotes, if they permanently fused with somebody and then their body was killed, they have a high chance of surviving. But this one, if that happened, it would definitely die, you know? And that's the end of episode 2.